Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the launch of the 2024 edition of the Asian and Pacific SDG Progress Report. We're happy to have a crowd here today at the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, as well as an audience joining us online. The Asia and Pacific SDG Progress Report is one of the annual flagship reports of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And each year, it provides an overview of SDG progress in the region, of course, and it serves as a foundation for many other activities conducted by ESCAP and our partners. This year, the report shines the spotlight on different success stories and trends and the unique challenges faced in the different parts of the region. It draws out the priorities for enhancing data availability on SDG indicators, especially for the most vulnerable population groups, which could help shape more equitable and inclusive development strategies. Joining us here today for this launch is Ms. Lin Yang, the Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCAP. In the middle there, Rachel Bevan, who is the Director of Statistics, and to my far right is Armin Biederbach-Nia, Head of the Statistical Data Management Unit in the Statistics Division at ESCAP. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ms. Lin Yang, the Deputy Executive Secretary of ESCAP, to get things started with her welcome message. Lin?
Thank you. Do I need to press any button or no? Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. It's my 5th month in Bangkok, so each visit is an adventure. It's so great to come to this cozy and lively place. I feel that it adds to the meaning of today's launch and SDG progress and should be robust. So with this, and welcome everyone to the launch of the Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report 2024, showcasing the transformative actions. The report provides an overview of current progress towards the SDGs in the Asia-Pacific region. This year's report continues to shine a spotlight on success stories and the trends, and has benefited from the substantive contributions from 8 UN other entities. The report also draws out priorities and opportunities for enhancing data availability on SDG indicators, especially for the most vulnerable population groups. Please allow me to highlight some key results from the report. At the current pace, Asia-Pacific will not achieve the 17 SDGs before 2062, making a significant 32-year delay. At the regional level, our report shows these key messages. First, progress towards the 2030 agenda remains uneven and inadequate. Second, goals with the most substantial progress since 2015 are Goal 1, no poverty, and Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Third, Goal 13, urgent climate action, is imperative, notably due to its ongoing regression. 4. Small island developing states, SEAs, stand out as the most in need of support, facing significant challenges in progressing towards the SDGs. 5th, the effective implementation of the SDGs varies significantly across different segments of the population. For instance, the report reviews that women and girls continue to face considerable challenges when it comes to accessing education and employment opportunities. Despite the slow progress in the region, there are some commendable practices in individual countries that showcase strategies to strengthen data system and the policy implementation, which will help countries to accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs. The report shows how data is being used to address climate change adaptation and mitigation, for biodiversity conservation, to build digital skills, reduce child labor, prevent child marriage, and to better measure stateless populations. You will see that increased capacity in data management and the better quality of data lies at the heart of all of these improved practices. I'm certain that there are many other good practices beyond those I have just mentioned and shared, and I'm pleased to see countries across the Asia-Pacific region are increasingly using data to inform decision-making. But despite the improvement in data availability, the pace of improvement has decelerated, and significant data gaps exist. Specifically, on Goal 5, gender equality, Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, continue to have the least available data. However, Asia-Pacific countries have shown a strong commitment to making better use of the data they do have, including through the integration of SDG indicators into their voluntary national reviews, what we call VNRs. In 2023, nearly half of the countries conducting VNRs in the region integrated the relevant SDG indicators into the progress dashboards. Finally, I would like to extend my sincere appreciation and thanks to our partners in the UN system who have contributed to the preparation of this report. With this, I now would like to officially launch the Asian Pacific SDG Progress Report 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. I turn the floor over now to Rachel for her presentation.
Thank you. We're just going to start with a short video before I give my presentation, so have a look at the screens. Thank you.
The world is in the midst of a profound transition. At the 2023 SDG Summit, the global community urged action and leadership in vital transitions for a brighter future. Food, energy, digitalization, education, social protection and jobs, climate change, biodiversity and pollution. The direction we take today shapes our collective destiny. The 2024 Asia-Pacific SDG Progress Report reveals that much remains to be done. On its current trajectory, the region will not meet any of the 17 SDGs by 2030. ESCAP estimates the goals will not be achieved before 2062, a full 32 years behind schedule. A complex scenario is unfolding. While progress towards certain goals advances, for others, progress is slow and for some regressing. Countries continue to grapple with the impact left by the COVID-19 pandemic. Countries in special situations, especially small island developing states, face the biggest challenge. These countries need more action and our support to catch up. Countries across regions are implementing evidence-based transformative actions to support sustainable development. From conserving coastal biodiversity in the Maldives to improving skills access in Vietnam or addressing child marriage prevention in Indonesia, initiatives spanning data systems, education and social inclusion demonstrate the region has the potential to accelerate progress. Unequal availability of crucial data persists as a challenge across nations and goals. The SDGs focused on gender equality and peace, justice and strong institutions suffer from glaring data gaps, hindering accurate progress assessments. Lack of granular data on people in vulnerable situations impedes the leave no one behind agenda. Voluntary national reviews demonstrate countries' commitment to evidence-based SDG implementation. Since 2016, SDG indicator usage increased in Asia-Pacific. By 2023, nearly half of the region's VNR countries integrated relevant SDG indicators into their progress dashboard. Now is the time to replicate national successes, to step up climate action in the fight against inequality and to strengthen cooperation between all national and international partners. Ending our senseless war on nature must move from words to action this year. The development to-do list is not just homework, this is hope work, and action is the price of hope.
Thank you very much. So good morning to all of you here in the room, but also online. You've just seen a short video, and now I have the pleasure of sharing with you the key highlights from the 2024 Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report, showcasing transformative actions. So this is the 8th in our series of annual SDG Progress Reports, which ESCAP has produced since the adoption of the SDG agenda in 2015. And this year we partnered with 8 other UN agencies in the region to produce this report. So let me start by sharing a few of the key messages from the report. So as we've heard earlier, based on the current rate of progress, Asia Pacific will not reach the 17 SDGs before 2062. So that is 32 years behind schedule. But for Goal 13 on climate action, we're not just not making any progress, we're actually regressing. And so to address this, it's essential that robust climate action measures are integrated into national policies, strategies and plans. And when we look at countries in special situations, we see that small island developing states face the most significant challenges in progressing towards the SDGs. We also see that SDG progress varies significantly across different segments of the population. We see that women and girls face different challenges than those faced by men. In the report, we've highlighted success stories where individual countries illustrate strategies which can strengthen the data systems and also policy implementation. And as we've heard earlier, a positive development which has emerged in 2023 has been more use of the data, and we see nearly half of the countries conducting voluntary national reviews in the region, integrating the SDG indicators into their progress dashboards. So as we've said, the average progress towards achieving all SDGs is increasing, but it's increasing very slowly. So back in 2017, it was at 4.4%, and now, in 2023, it had reached 17%. So based on that current rate of progress, as we said, we're not going to achieve all the SDGs until 2062. When we look now at the goal level, we see that as a region, we're not actually on track to meet any of the 17 goals by 2030. And if you look here at the vertical line, you'll see that if we were on track, those bars should be reaching that vertical line in the middle, or even go further across towards the end goals. We see that for goals 1 on no poverty and goal 9 on industry, innovation and infrastructure, they are showing the greatest progress, but it is actually still too slow to reach the target by 2030. And as I've mentioned, you can see in red, goal 13 on climate action is not just showing any progress at all, it's regressing. For goals 5 and 16 on 5 on gender equality and goal 16 on peace, justice, strong institutions, we don't have enough data to actually be able to really assess progress for those. But we see for all of the other goals, the bars shown in blue, we are making progress, but it's slow progress. And if we look at the target level, the picture is again very mixed. We can see that there are 13 of the 116 measurable targets, those shown in green, where we actually are on track to meet the 2030 target. And whilst you can't see all the detail here, you can see that we'll miss 89% of the 116 measurable targets by 2030. And that's all the targets shown here in amber, those where progress needs to accelerate, and those in red, where we actually need that reversal in trend. And just under half of the targets are shaded in grey, and that shows that there's still not enough data to assess progress. If we look, though, at what's going on for countries in special situations, we can compare how these have changed over time. So the countries in special situations are shown in the yellow, orange and red lines, compared with the regional average shown at the top in black. And we can see the huge impact there of COVID when regional progress markedly slowed down. But whereas for the region as a whole, progress has since improved, but we see for landlocked developing countries, least developed countries, and especially for small island developing states, it's taking them much longer to recover. So whilst as the region as a whole, progress stands at 17% against the 2030 agenda, for landlocked countries, it's just 13%, then a bit lower still at 11.5% for the least developed countries, and much lower still for the small island developing states, where we see that progress is just under 6%. And the gap between those small island developing states and other countries in the region is actually widening over time. So let us look a little bit more then at some of those different population groups as well, and look at some of the challenges they face. So we see that despite there has been overall progress in school enrollment rates, women and girls still continue to face challenges when accessing education and employment opportunities, and they have lower school enrollment rates, and the literacy rates are lower. We know as well that young women also face difficulties getting jobs, which leads to higher rates of youth unemployment. And in contrast to that, though, we see that the challenges that men tend to face are related more to health and personal safety. So they suffer more from cardiovascular disease, from chronic respiratory conditions, and they're more likely than women to contract HIV. And we also see they have higher rates of suicide and also road traffic deaths. We also see that where people live is a key factor in determining levels of poverty and also inequality. People living in rural areas are more likely to have limited access to drinking water and sanitation services, and they also have less access to clean cooking fuels. And all of those will have a detrimental effect on their health. We see that people living in urban areas tend to fare better, but that's not the case for all groups. And the poorest children living in urban areas are actually less likely to complete upper secondary education than those living in rural areas. But what we do see as well across the region is that rich and poor countries alike face challenges in these 3 SDGs. So Goal 2, no hunger, Goal 8 on jobs and economic growth, and Goal 17 on partnerships. All countries across the region are facing challenges in these areas. I don't think you can see the detail in this chart, but you've got a handout before you, and it is available online. But this year, for the first time, we've produced country SDG profiles, and you can find these on our SDG Gateway website. And these SDG profiles shows the country's progress towards the goal. So where the bar is green, that shows indicators where the country is making progress. The areas in yellow are where progress is stagnant, and the areas in red show indicators where there's been a regression. And again, the areas in grey are those without sufficient data. So we've also included a star next to each of the goals. So the star shows the percentage of SDG indicators which are performing above the regional average. So you can see the portion of the star, which is shown in yellow, shows the indicators which are performing above the regional average, and the portion of the star shown in grey reflects those indicators which are performing below the regional average. Please do have a look at the SDG Gateway and the website to actually look in more detail at any particular countries which you might be interested in. This year we also wanted to highlight a number of good practices which can serve as examples of transformative actions which countries can take. We see cities across Asia and the Pacific are places of immense opportunities, and they're the key to regions' future growth and sustainability. In the area of digital and public infrastructure, our report highlights how better urban data in Indonesia, Nepal and the Philippines is helping to gain a better understanding of urbanization dynamics, and that's those changing elements that make up the urban environment. And the information collected is allowing policymakers to distinguish between rural and urban areas, and also to better understand the particular challenges that the populations in both of these areas face, including their differing access to basic services. And it's helping policymakers as well to understand how urban areas are changing over time, and it's helping to plan things like public transport and open spaces for public use. We know as well, ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong learning opportunities has the potential to have a transformative effect and impact on all of the other goals. And many countries across Asia and the Pacific have now established national benchmarks for Goal 4 in the area of education. And these are really helping to revitalize momentum towards this goal. And the benchmarks are helping to hold countries accountable for their commitments to education, as well as helping to enhance national planning processes and encouraging discussions on challenges and good practices. For example, in Indonesia, we see that they've integrated the education indicators and these benchmarks into their government monitoring, which is helping to strengthen education sector policies and programs. Another transformative area which can have a catalytic and multiplier effect across many of the SDGs is jobs and social protection. And our report highlights in the Philippines how they are using better data to understand and address financial barriers to supporting children with disabilities. They conducted a study to find out how much it costs to raise a child with a disability, and they've been using that data to calculate the level for a new disability allowance. And they're now in the process of adopting new legislation to provide for a disability allowance, and that's currently before the Philippines Congress. And in China, we see analysis from their 2020 population census, which was conducted by the National Bureau of Statistics, is providing much more detailed information on the child population, where they live, but also some of the challenges they face. And just to give one example, the analysis showed that actually 1/3 of children nationwide in China do not live with both parents. Countries can also take transformative actions in the areas of biodiversity and nature, which has the potential to advance the SDGs and also to protect our planet. Small island developing states like the Maldives are increasingly vulnerable to climate change, including rising temperatures, altered rainfall patterns, sea level rise, and more frequent storm surges and tropical cyclones. And in Maldives, they're using data to identify the exposure to multi-hazard flood and sea level rise risks under different climate scenarios. So the current 13% exposure to multi-hazard risks could rise to 99% by 2060 under different climate scenarios. The marine and coastal diversity of the Maldives includes mangroves, wetlands, and 5% of the world's reefs, and these can help mitigate against sea level rise, coastal flooding, erosion, and wave impacts while supporting biodiversity. Pacific and small island developing states are at that front line as well of those challenges to meeting the SDGs, and they're particularly vulnerable to the impact of climate change. 14 Pacific small island developing states have now developed robust national environmental portals, and these data portals are helping to inform decision making, including in Vanuatu, where the Department of Environmental Protection and Conservation has introduced legislation to regulate against single-use plastics, and that's the first time they've introduced such legislation in the Pacific. But to be able to assess progress, we need at least 2 data points. And on average, for member states in Asia and the Pacific, only just over half of the SDG indicators have at least 2 data points. And while we have seen a steady improvement from just 42% of SDG indicators with adequate data in 2020 to almost 52% in 2023, this still leaves a long way to go. For just under 10% of the indicators, there is some data, but not enough to assess the progress. And for 39% of indicators, there's no data. We know as well that data availability varies considerably across the goals, with Goal 7 on affordable and clean energy having the most data, with over 90% of indicators having sufficient data to assess progress. But if we look in more detail, we can see that it's Goal 5, as we mentioned before, on gender equality, and Goal 16 on peace, justice, and strong institutions, which continue to have the least data available. And when we're talking about data availability, we also look in the report about the rate of progress for different population groups. We know that data is actually even more limited for these population subgroups, and granular data is only available for 5 dimensions for just 29 of the out of 231 SDG indicators. So we can see here that there are 25 SDG indicators where there is data broken down by sex to show the different rates of progress for men and boys compared to women and girls. There's 13 indicators which can be broken down by urban and rural populations, but only 6 indicators can be broken down by age group, and 5 by income group, and just 1 by level of education. We know that granular data, though, really is essential for policymakers to understand the impact of policies on development progress and also to develop new policies. However, on a positive note, what we do see is an increased use of what data does exist. And in 2023, we saw that increased use of SDG indicators in statistical dashboards and data visualizations by Asia Pacific countries, particularly those who are preparing for their voluntary national reviews. And that is their own reviews of their progress towards the Agenda 2030. So recognizing these challenges in ESCAP, we are helping countries in a number of ways to improve their SDG monitoring at the national level and to improve the use of that data. And we're working with countries to review the SDG indicators and to localize them to their own context and to set their own targets. And one tool we have for doing that is the National SDG Tracker. That's a free and open tool which countries can use to develop their own indicator set and their own targets, and then to assess progress towards those targets against the SDG framework. And they can also use the same tool to look at progress against their own national development plans and strategies. As I've mentioned before, we also have the SDG Gateway, where we maintain detailed SDG information. So we have various visualizations there, some of which you've seen today, and some of which are in the highlights brochure that people in the room have. But the Gateway also includes information on data gaps, and it also identifies how those data gaps might be able to be filled. So please do take a look at the Gateway to look in more detail at the situation, to look as well at how individual countries are progressing. Please take a look at the report, also at the website, and you can see the links before you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for that very comprehensive presentation. Happy to open the floor now to our audience here at the FCCT. If anybody has any questions, we do have a hand mic for you, but we just ask that you please identify yourself and your affiliation. If you have MTS, yeah, we can start with.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Imtiaz Maqbul. I'm the journalist here. I'm a life member of the club, and I cover the travel and tourism industry. Firstly, thank you very much indeed for using club again for your events. It's a little bit difficult getting into ESCAP these days, so we are very glad that you come over here regularly. I just had one question. If the target now is 62, 2062. Well, not target. Sorry, the delay is 2062. Do you think that figure might even be further deteriorated, maybe even set back even longer, as a result of the ongoing wars right now, because that is draining away a substantial amount of resources. Just the other day, the IISS, the International Institute of Strategic Studies, issued a report saying that global military expenditure is now $2.2 trillion and counting. How is that likely to, particularly UN being more devoted to peace building, and as you pointed out, there's the least data available on peace. I'm just wondering, where do you see that gap being bridged? Because the peace situation today in the world is getting worse, military expenditure is getting higher, and the resources available for meeting all these SDGs is certainly going to get less as time goes by. So that's going to be a major conundrum going forward, particularly for this part of the world. And where do you see that actually, how do you see that making the 2062 target even, delaying it even further than what it is right now?
Maybe we'll take a couple of questions if there's anybody else at the moment. No, everybody's a little bit shy this morning. Okay, perhaps, I don't know if, Lynn, you want to take that?
Thank you. Thank you for asking this question. I feel it's very timely and also relevant. And by looking at the SDG Progress Report, in particular by looking at the 2062 and also this 32 or 34-year delay, we see a very grim picture. And also by looking back in the past few years, the world suffered cascading crisis. Right, we got through the COVID, and we having the war, and also we are facing the climate changes. So what I want to share with the colleagues is that colleagues may be aware, last September in New York, and the heads of government and all the leaders gathered there to have the SDG summit. And there are about 163 speakers spoke and took the floor, highest in recent years. And they adopted the political declaration by consensus. Why we say that it's quite a milestone document, also sending a strong signal, because first of all, in such a difficult situation, we all understand, having a political declaration adopted by consensus, what does it mean? It means that the world leaders, people from all over the world, the international community is still committed to the SDGs. Such a strong commitment. Second is that by looking at the political declaration, there are bold and ambitious announcements. I could share two. One is that the member states support the further deliberation of the Secretary General's proposal of the what we call SDG stimulus plan, SDG stimulus. It aims to scale up the investment in developing countries with 500 billion per year up to 2030. That is also, I think, is agreed by all the member states. Second is that with the support of the UN system, member states identified some priority areas as the accelerated means for the SDG implementation. Just now in the video, we highlighted those areas, 6 priority areas, including the food system, energy, education, social protection and jobs, and digital connectivity, and climate, biodiversity, and pollution. So those areas are identified by the collective efforts, and both by the member states as well as by the UN system. So in the coming years, we are going to work together with member states to support their efforts to accelerate the action. So those, I think, send the strong signal that we shall not lose the hope. More importantly, I also would like to add that this year in September, again in New York, the UN is about to host the Summit of the Future. This is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and to look at how we can adapt the current multilateral institutions to the reality, to meet the challenges as well as the opportunities. So many people ask about the relationship between the SDG Summit and the Summit of the Future. And I would like to explain it today by using this opportunity in a very, very simple way. The SDG Summit, SDG framework, give us depict a picture of what we want to achieve. The Summit of the Future aims to offer the solutions of what, how we can make it happen, what kind of tools and mechanisms, what kind of adaptations we're going to take so that the multilateralism and the multilateral institutions can better meet the reality. So they are complementing each other, they are reinforcing each other. With those two milestone events, I believe that with these strong commitments, we will get there. Though the progress right now is slow, it's far from our expectation, but we see some very, very promising areas that we are going to invest into. So with that, I will see, let's not lose hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Question over here. Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric, and I'm working for the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation. Very interesting presentation and also very interesting report. I think really we need it, and I think we all understand the use of, say, statistics in order to prioritize our scarce development resources. I would like to hear from all three of you panelists, what do you see as the biggest problem? Is it to create more disaggregated subnational statistical data, or is it to get policy makers to make use of the data that you already have generated?
Yes, thank you for your question. Very interesting question. The issue has several aspects. I think we should first remember that since last year, for the first time, we could say glass is half full. We have over 50% of SDG indicators with data in Asia-Pacific region, and we need to focus on maximizing the use of existing data for monitoring. Data gap should not become an excuse for us to not monitor progress against the SDGs. And as you have seen in presentation, facilitating better coordination at the country level, within the government, and between the governments and the international agencies has proved to be very effective to multiply the use of SDG indicators in voluntary national reviews. And we need to take this opportunity and continue these efforts to maximize the use. But of course, we shouldn't lose sight of the data gap. As also was covered in presentation, we can see that data gap is uneven. Some goals, gender equality, SDG 5, and peace, justice, strong institution, SDG 16, are the ones that we need to prioritize. We need to invest more, and we need to create more demand and incentive, political incentive, to produce data on those. But also disaggregated, at the disaggregation level, only 29 indicators have disaggregation, and this is very low. In order to better understand the full picture of progress among all subpopulation groups, we have to invest more on providing more disaggregated data on the SDGs.
Thanks, Armin. Rachel, you had some to add?
Sure, just to add, thank you for the question, and just to add to that, we do work, at the country level with our other kind of UN agencies as well, to really help countries to be able to look into these issues in more depth, because it is a complicated picture, but often what we do see as well, when you actually delve into things, there is a lot more information that's available within a country, but it might be being held by other parts of government. So different line ministries on health, education, food, forestries. And then it's quite complicated to then work out how you bring these different partners together to make sure that you can get access to data, but also to think about that might involve changing legislation, but it might also mean there need to be changes in standards and classifications so that the data is actually comparable. And that involves then working at quite a detailed level, country by country, and also indicator by indicator to really look at that. And it really as well involves the policymakers as well as the statisticians, and working with both of them.
Thank you, Rachel. Any other questions here in the room? Lynn, if you don't mind, I'd like to come back to you. Just a moment ago, you talked about sort of what's happening at the global level with the SDG Summit and Summit of the Future later this year. I think people would like to perhaps understand a bit more, what can countries here, right, in the Asia-Pacific region do to accelerate their progress on the SDGs, especially in areas that are most challenging. We hear that climate change is actually going backwards, right, for example, right? So perhaps if you have some thoughts on what countries in the Asia-Pacific region can do.
Thank you, Mitch. And while colleagues are talking, and also in particular related to the second question, I'm also looking this page. Very, very interesting. This year, as Rachel introduced, this year, for the first time, we'll have the country progress on the SDG indicators. In comparison with the last year, and last year we only have the PACE leaders. We have a selected of a group of countries. That is yesterday evening when we can do the comparison of those two. So if you look at the charts, I also marked some areas. If the group of countries, look at the Pacific, look at the South and the Southwest Asia, they have the most gray areas. Due to several reasons, some probably because of the progress made, some due to the availability of data. So this draws our attention to an issue, the particular attention to the countries in the special situations, as I said in my opening remarks. Also draw our attention to the vulnerable groups like women, like children, like disability and older persons. And at this region, I'm coming from this region, and by coming back, my observation is that we need to pay in particular attention to 3 areas of work and 3 mega trends as we are experiencing. One is the climate change and energy transition. And needless to say, already data shows that SDG 13 is regressing, and the climate action is not, in keeping up with the resilience. Energy transition, we see some progress. However, the pace is not there yet. Second is the demographic shift. In the region, the population is aging, and aging in a fast way. Also, we saw the low fertility as well. So colleagues gave me the data saying that by 2050, our region will have about 1 billion old persons. So this is a trend. It's a success of the SDGs, right? People have enjoyed longer life expectancy. We shall not see it as a negative. We shall always remember that it's not negative. It's a success of the human progress. At the same time, with the population aging, how we are going to look at the challenges and opportunities as well. And the third one is the overall and social, and in particular the digitalization and the technological advances and their impact in the social area. So all of those, because we know that Asia Pacific is also the front runner in the digital area. And if we are going to respond to those trends, to those opportunities, to those challenges, we feel that we need a fresh vision in the region. A fresh vision to look at what kind of development strategy, what kind of sustainable path we are going to pursue. That is ESCAP's role, to advise the member states. We also need solidarity and determination. In the current situation, how we can help strengthen the regional cooperation so that we can build a better multilateralism. The third is, of course, as Rachel and Amma mentioned, the sound policies. What kind of sound policies? In our view, the policies has to be people-centered. That requires, as I just briefly introduced, we're going to have the SDG stimulus. If we have the money, where the money should be directed to? We feel that we should put more efforts, more investment in the education, in the health, in the the social protection. Here in the region, half of the population does not have any social protection schemes. So this has to be people-centered. We also need to look at how best that we can facilitate the transition. The transition in some critical areas, for example, energy, for example, transport, for example, ICT. So those areas we need to put more efforts and pay more attention to. Last but not least, how we can mobilize different stakeholders so that the government can take a more whole of a government, whole of a society approach, break the silos, look at the issues in a more cross-sectoral approach. So that is the thing ESCAP is trying very hard to promote. With this, I believe that the region will provide the best practices. Asia Pacific can continue to take the lead in contributing to the global growth. Thank you. Thank you, Mitch.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Any other questions from colleagues here in the room? No? Please.
Thanks for this opportunity. I was looking at climate action, which is goal number 13. Obviously, it really stands out in your presentation as the only one in regression. I can see the indicator that is the problem is climate change policies. 13.2, if I'm correct, because it's red up there and the other ones are gray and yellow. As a layperson, it just surprises me if the conclusion is that, say, we are regressing on climate change policies at a time when there's so much attention on climate change. But maybe it's because I don't understand the indicators correctly, so I just would like to get a little bit of an elaboration on why climate change stands out so negatively in your report.
Yes. Thank you for your question again. The indicators under goal 13 are focusing on greenhouse gas emission, the disaster impact on the population, and also national disaster risk reduction strategies at the national level and also at the subnational level. Actually, the strategies are those indicators that show good progress. The main, the bottleneck here is the greenhouse gas emission and the impact of natural disasters on the population.
Okay, thank you. We did have one question from audience online, if you don't mind. Their question is whether we have included information on what the private sector has been doing to focus on SDGs. He cites an example where some multinational corporations have been doing more on climate change action and renewable energy than governments. So.
Thanks for the question. Well, SDG indicators come from the entire national statistical system. It is not necessarily only the public sector that produces data. Data could also come from private sector. But we also have, in particular, indicators under Goal 17, which are related to the public-private partnerships. And those are also included under Goal 17 partnerships on the goals.
Thanks, Armin. Lynn?
I also want to add one point regarding the role of private sector as well as different stakeholders. And next week and on Tuesday, we are going to have our Asia Pacific Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. Colleagues, please stay tuned to the forum. That is the platform conveying as many as the stakeholders as possible to the forum, the biggest platform in the region. And so the voices from private sectors, from different civil societies will be heard. And also we arranged a wide range of activities to engage the different stakeholders, in particular in relation to the follow-up to the SDG Summit and also preparation for the Summit of the Future. So UN, the United Nations, while recognizing its intergovernmental nature, right? It's a member states-driven process. And we have to also recognize the reality that met the different stakeholders, in particular the private stakeholders, to the extent and the role they play in their area, for example, climate change, in the area of digitalization. So we shall not, shut our eyes to those the role they play. So we really keen to engage them in our regional forum, and also I hope that the journalists present today will help us to promote our Asia Pacific Forum for Sustainable Development. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sure, and we'll give you the last word, MTS.
Sorry, just to come back to SDG 16 and the lack of indicators. A close look at the finer points of SDG 16 actually relates to some of the most fundamental challenges facing Asia today, particularly in view of all the numerous elections that are being held this year back to back. Public access to information, corruption, justice. I'd be very keen to know, why is it so much of a problem getting information to back this up? And what exactly do you all plan to do with it? Because what do you plan to do about it to rectify that gap, particularly in view of the fact that many of these elections this year in the Asia Pacific region are actually being fought around those very points?
Tough question.
Would you like to respond to that?
Well, I can try. I don't know if I have the answer. It's a difficult question indeed. But international organizations are working on, including UNODC, working on developing methodologies and standards for indicators under Goal 16. One of the reasons why we don't have enough data, in addition to the lack of commitment to produce data or prioritize the topic, is the lack of international standards and methodologies, because some of these issues are new to the world of statistical systems. So the countries, we have provided actually good examples in our previous report. You can refer to previous report. There are good examples where countries are adopting new standards and methodologies to measure some of the issues that you raised. But the work is in progress, and I hope in the future we'll see more data on those.
And just to add as well, so we do have a partnership, so UNODC, so UN Office of Drugs and Crime, they have a regional centre of excellence on crime and criminal justice statistics, which is a joint centre with the Korean Statistics Office, so based in Korea, and they're working as well specifically on the kind of how do we get the methodologies agreed, and then working at the country level to really support countries as they look to gather this information.
I would like to refer you to two sources. One is that next week in the regional forum, APFSD, and Goal 16 will be under review. So, and also in this year's high-level political forum in New York, and the goal will be also under review. We will hear more from there. And at the same time, I would like to refer you to the SG, the Secretary General, UN Secretary General's remarks in the General Assembly to outline his priorities. One key topic very relevant to Goal 17 is the trust in government. How important to strengthen the public service, to strengthen the public institutions, so that we can better serve the people, can put people in the center. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. This brings us near the end of our time. Perhaps if I can give Rachel, if you'd like, just any final words to wrap up the session?
Thank you. I think what we would just like to say is please do take a look at the report in more detail. Also look at our website because we have a lot more information. We are only able to ever kind of put some of it into the report. So please do go into the website, look at things in more detail, and then also hopefully you'll be able to kind of explore and to see a bit more on what's actually going on. And also I think to really kind of look at the positive examples, because I think for this year, for the first time, it's a bit easier to actually identify, you know, which countries might be making better than average progress on a particular goal. So we hope that that will also be able to kind of shine a spotlight and help us to identify when we might be able to look at some more, gathering some more good examples of what can be done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Armin colleagues. We thank you, everybody here at the club, for joining us today for this launch, as well as the audience, again, online, following along, following the proceedings along online. It brings us to the end of this event. We do invite you here in the club to stick around for some refreshments. Those of you online, we hope to see you next year. Maybe the refreshments will be inducement enough for you to come and join us in person. But once again, thank you everybody for your interest in the report, and again, do invite you to interact with colleagues if you'd like to learn more about it, the report. Thank you so much.